Okay, well, here we are. We are doing the official Beyond the Letter Mother's Day podcast, and we got mothers in the house, studio audience in here. So it's our first time doing that. It was cool. It's a cool energy, a lot of excitement. And I think for most of you guys, like we shared a couple podcasts ago, you had to get almost 2 hours into one of the episodes to get the announcement to be in this. So you guys are the ones who are faithful. I don't know if you know that, Grandma, Mom, but we didn't publicly share for the moms to be here. We put it at the end of one of our podcasts, 2 hours into it. So you had to listen to the whole episode to get the announcement, you know?
And I'll say this, I'll add into that. My mom literally just texted me yesterday and she goes, "Are you kidding me? I just got done with it and I went to register." So, hey, snooze you lose.
Bummer.
You shouldn't wait.
Dang.
You shouldn't wait.
Not
Sorry,
even
Mom.
not even Ashlee Mesa's mom got pulled to get on the podcast. What a shame. Oh, man. Wow. You could have just still invited your mom, Ashlee.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of cold. It's kind of cold, man.
Pulled up a spot over there.
Okay.
I told her she had 10 minutes, but she wouldn't make it.
Oh, okay. Today is special because we do, as we said, it's our Mother's Day episode. We've talked about this for a while. We have mine and Caleb's mom here, the people's madre in the house. And so we have our mom, Mama Sinners, which is Pastor Diego's wife, who is generally the more quiet one, who probably where Nathan gets it from in terms of his his quietness. But we thought it'd be great. We're having Mom on. She, as you've heard many times before in the podcast, she's the one who's basically more of our home influence and was kind of the one more of a stay-at-home mom for us. So our mom is probably our biggest, raising influence as our dad was kind of building the church and things like that. And then we have Pastor Diego's mom, Grandma Pauline, which now that she's a great grandmother, she's been for many years now, she is known as Grandma Old Mama. So that's what her mom was called when we and Caleb were kids. And so now that she has reached that status of honor, she is Old Mama, and her husband, Grandpa Diego, is Old Papa. So Old Mama and Old Papa is what our kids affectionately know them as. I call her Gammy Gams because I don't know. She's Mexican, and it sounds super white to say Gammy Gams, and I always thought that was funny, in my 20s. So she's Gammy Gams. So we have that, and we have two other mothers here, which is my wife Ashlee, who happens to be a mother, and then Sanaz, our sister-in-law, me and Caleb's sister-in-law, who was, it's not out yet, but this Sunday will be a debate between Caleb and Sanaz on some things. So that will, by the time this airs, it would have already been last week's episode, but the group here right now, we don't know it yet. So that one's going to be an interesting one and a fun one as well. And so that's why we're here today. And then we have some great mothers here in the room who have decided to join us, and they're with us. We're so thankful for them being with us. Thought it'd be really exciting. And here's what we're doing today outside of opening this conversation. Originally, we're going to obviously do what we normally do, which is no agenda. Nothing gets, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do it. We don't ever do that on the podcast. But we did give the moms in here an opportunity to kind of submit questions, and we went through them, and we're like,
very good question.
These questions are so good that we were like, why should we even start with our own conversations? Instead, really start with these questions because they're that good, and I think it will blossom and open up many conversations. So, Mom, I'm going to start with you first, though, Mama Sinners. That's what I call her.
Yeah, tell them why you call me Sinners.
I call you Sinners because
explain, please.
In Caleb's view, it's because you're wicked and you're evil as a woman. No, I'm just playing.
You'll have to
was that what we're gonna do now?
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Mama Sinners is just because Cindy. So because some people have thought I said S-I-N, sinners, like sinners. No. But it's been Sinners, C-I-N-D-Y, so Mama Sinners. But Mama Cindy is what everyone calls her, or Pastor Cindy, because she was one of the founding pastors with my dad of the church. So that's what most people know her as. So, Mom, what are you most excited about to talk on the podcast? Because I thought we were going to have to convince you guys much harder to be on this, but you and Grandma both were like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Why'd you say yeah to be open to share on the podcast?
Well, I agreed to it because you're my sons, and you guys are doing an amazing job with my daughter-in-laws on this. And I thought, well, maybe they want me and Grandma Pauline in it just to get our input on, you know, the mothers, the grandmothers, the great-grandmothers, you know, some sayings and opinions and stuff. And, but I was praying that when I said yes.
You thought it'd be canceled?
No, that it'd just be, you know, we're pretty much transparent people. So, you know, I thought, okay, well, you know, we could do that, and it'll be fun and hopefully easy and not technical questions. Yeah.
No, they're all, yeah.
And we did, no, we were having an audience.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No,
Oh.
no.
You guys
We
must not
walked in
listen
and
to the podcast. No.
I missed that one.
I do listen, but
I know you do. I know you both do. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're fun. They're good. They're good.
Good.
They're great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mom, for being here. Grandma,
yes.
what made you say, yeah, I'm gonna do that? But you're like our dad in the sense that you're totally okay with being very vocal, and you tend to be, you carry a room. Like when you go in a room, you have energy and charisma, and so you're kind of like Dad in that way. So I don't think I was gonna have to convince you of all people much. But other than like what made you say, yeah, of course I'm going to do this, and you know, and I know you listen to it many times as well.
I do. I listen to all of them, but I pressed the button too early about this.
Yeah.
I think the main reason was, number one, I love the podcast. I love all the episodes and the guests that you've had. They're so open and transparent. I felt that for Mother's Day, this being the Mother's Day season coming up, that it would, number one, I considered it to be an honor that you would ask us. And I considered an honor that you even want to hear what an old lady like me would have to say. I'm reminded of meeting your beautiful mother when she was young and vivacious and full of energy. She still is, but I'm talking about, you know, so many years ago. And so with the podcast, I thought, what a great opportunity to host her, to honor her, for the people or whomever's going to be listening to know what you said in the beginning was how your dad initially started it, but your mom was there. That because they don't know that side of it, and that side of it is gone. I mean, unless it's made vocal and brought forward, they'll never know the time that she invested, all the hard work she invested, all the time that she, you know, just opened her home and valued people in so many different ways, aside from being a beautiful mom to you three guys. So that was the reason.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. And what you said was pointing the point out. You know, almost everybody knows Pastor Diego Mesa of Abundant Living Family Church, but Mom always being more of that quiet, meek person without people understanding. I mean, really, the where our church is at, or whatever voice there does exist, it wouldn't be half of where it was at without him having a mom like our mom who championed it and just has been an anchor in all the years. Like, didn't want or need to be a person that really cared much about a platform or sharing your own opinions, but more so wanted to celebrate people and just, I just remember that growing up, it was always about the local church and the people of the local church, and you just, hey, whatever's necessary for people to be reached and touched. And so whether that was you having to hold it down with me and our brothers at home, but then there'd be times where Dad would say, hey, you know, the women need a voice, and the women, you need to get up and do women's and all that. And you'd be, I remember growing up, you'd be like, no. And so Dad would write all of your messages, and you would just go up and read them on paper, you know? Like you would just go, he'd give it, and then
Yeah.
I remember, but you were like, hey, if that's what the church needs, and like, I don't want to speak or anything, and Dad's like, well, I'll help write it for you, and you go up and share it, and you just have always been so, you know.
Now, can I want to
Can I
say,
get one of those messages?
No.
well, I want to say something along those lines, because I try not to start fights, but I always finish them. And so I just want to say that I am the good son, because now listen to this, because I am the one, the son, and that you all want when he grows up, because I schedule at least 2 lunches a month with my mom. To get to know her. Okay? So Adam can't say that. So now I say that just to let everybody know I finished the fight that he started. So with that said,
How often
we
do
can
you go
move
to
on.
Disneyland with me and my family?
No, we can move on. No, we
How
can
many
move on.
times a month do you come to my house and we hang out? So
I'm shareable.
you know,
I'm shareable.
you know,
Okay. No, hey,
it's okay.
Hey, you started it.
It's
You
okay.
started it. Okay. So with that said, you know, it's something I've mentioned in the podcast, how those lunches, you know, have really, and I don't even, you probably didn't hear this part because it was a random part in one of the podcasts, but I made the point that during this season of my trial, that our lunches, you really went from, in my mind, from a mother to a friend. And how that's just been so meaningful for me, because I've learned things about you more on a friend level, about your life, your growing up, and when Dad was just grinding in ministry, and how that was hard on you, and how you went through that season, and even with your own dad, truck driving, and you would be a passenger seat in the truck and stuff. So like, if you could like explain in like a short description, how would you summarize that season of the building of this church, when it was just grind and hustle and just 24/7, Dad working? What was that like, raising 3 sons full time, with the father not really that present, because the father was engaged in his career, in his mission, and his purpose for the church?
Well, it was difficult. I mean, for those that are in ministry, especially now with my sons and my daughter-in-law's in ministry now, and they have young ones. It wasn't easy, but you know, when God tells you you're going to, you know, do something, especially with your dad, Pastor Diego, you're going to start a church. Well, then, okay, well, where's the wife going to come into the picture? Well, she, you know, when your husband's called, your wife's called, right? That's what they say. And so it was hard when they were little, but for me, I mean, we talked about it, Dad and I talked about it, and we said that the kids aren't going to be neglected. Church isn't going to come first, or my ministry ain't going to come first. I am just going to stay home and take care of these kids. And I was fine with that, because that's what I wanted to do. That was the reason why I had children. I want to stay home. I want to, you know, bring them up into our Christian home and enjoy them. And so when we started the church, Adam was just 5 years old, and you were like 7, and then Nathan 9, somewhere around there. So, taking care of 3 little ones under the age of 10, and then starting a ministry, brand new ministry, like Mama Pauline said, in our home, you know. And then we had started with, they were family members, the 12, and there were hardly no kids. There were just maybe a few. So our bedroom was the children's ministry. And then outside, they would go outside and play for recess. Yes.
Grandma was the children's
She
teacher.
was the children's teacher.
With the little felt board with felt Moses and felt sheep.
That was back
and
in
all.
the day.
That's right.
And she would, maybe we could get her to do it, but she would act as the characters in the Bible. So she would act as Moses, or act as she would fully put on their voice. And go ahead.
But as a mother, I wanted to obviously be there for my kids, take care of them. And as we were doing ministry out of the home, you know, I can say I had the most awesome children, not to be biased or anything, but they were good boys. They listened. They did what, you know, we asked them to do. I think they were having fun in ministry because, you know, they were doing, you know, moving their toys around, moving their furniture around, and going outside and playing. And this is out of our home. And then they weren't in the way. They didn't, you know, make it difficult for me because even starting out of our home, I had to, I helped Dad, obviously, move our furniture out because we move it out into the garage. And that way we could set up folding chairs in our living room. I'd go buy donuts and coffee and all that. So it was a blessing to where they kind of, you know, were there to be a part of it, to help. You know, to enjoy. Was
there ever a point in the early days where you thought, this is ridiculous? Why are we doing this? Like, did that ever come across your mind? Like, this is just crazy. Why are we sacrificing so much for all this?
No.
Never crossed your mind?
No, never did. Because
because you went from the home, you're moving furniture, then you went to a school. We moved to a school, and then you're setting up at a school, and then you never thought, this is crazy. Late nights and all the.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I mean, it was. You know, you're serving God. You're doing things for the Lord. And I did not come or be brought up in a Christian home or anything like Dad was, you know, with Grandma Pauline, even though, you know,
Catholic, but
then transition to Christian. And so he grew up, you know, with Mama Pauline praying all the time and you know, worshiping and things like that. I didn't, but I knew of God. I did receive Jesus in my heart when I was young, but to rededicate my life when I met, you know, your dad, and then got baptized and filled with the Holy Spirit and things like that. I mean, that's just the joy. I mean, for me, you know, in my life with God, and then just, you know, praying and just thanking him for wonderful children to bring them up in church and stuff. And no, I didn't. I mean, I'm not saying it was easy, and I'm not saying, you know, it was difficult, it was hard, but as long as I think like for most of us moms, as long as I was with my children first, take care of them, that was important.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then ministry, and then I did whatever needed to be done. And yes, I am the quiet one. I'm behind the scenes person. I'll do serving people. I'll do whatever. But Dad, when I started women's, he did help me.
Yet on the other hand, too, Cindy. On the other hand, Cindy, do you remember when we were growing out of your home, and he was trying to find a place, and you kept saying, "Well, let's just try the school. Let's just try the school." And he kept saying no.
Sometimes I think he doesn't, you know, he doesn't believe that I could do anything. But because we were looking for a building, because we outgrew our home, and we went pretty much everywhere, but we didn't think about the schools. And so he said, no, we were turned down, you know, by this place, that place, whatever. And I said, well, you know what, I'm going to go to the school. He said, no, whatever, go do what you want to do. So one day I went down to the school district, and I talked to them, told them what was going on, what we were doing, blah, blah, blah. And they said, sure, here's the paperwork, take it home, fill it out, and bring it back.
Wow. I think knowing Dad, because I have a lot of semblances of Dad in the area of work and career. Me and Dad are such visionaries, and we have such a clear vision when we're building stuff that anyone that has an idea, it better be better than the vision that we feel we have. But as I've gotten older, but here's why I say that, because it's not a gift. It's actually a curse, because the older I get and the more life I've seen, and I've seen really ugly situations in church with friends and family and stuff like that, the more I reflect, I'm always like, man, Ashlee was the first to start having inklings. And I'd just shut it down. I'd be like, no, we're not talking about that, or no, we're not doing that, or no, that, because in my head, I'm like, I have a vision, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, because I think a lot of men prioritize logic and intellect and think those are the biggest things. So you using the school, he's thinking, well, how is that logical? How does that make sense? I need a building. I need a space. I need a this. And you're using intuition. You know, you're using part of your feeling, your gut, and I just feel like this is the right thing to do. And for many men, we go, if it's not logical and it's not intellect, then no, we're foot down. It's not happening. And the more that obviously I've been married and the more that I've seen my wife right on a lot of things, is understanding that she has a grace, and most women do have a grace for discernment.
Yes.
They know, you know, they get an inkling on people faster than men do. And I know you have had that over the years a lot. And it would always come off as more judgmental, or you being more boundaried, and she just doesn't want to open up, and then look, you know, a year later they're not around anymore. Why did Mama Cindy not open up to them? I wonder why, you know. And so I think that's a great example of you and Grandma pointing that out and knowing all the history of the church and being there from the beginning too, is that and I didn't know that till right now, that the school move was more of your instinctual decision, and you went and brokered that deal, basically, you know?
She took charge.
Yeah.
She just went in there and said, we're doing it.
Yeah. And presented Dad the option, and whether he was going to go for it or not, you know?
Well, personally, too, I wanted to be in a building, too,
Yeah.
somewhere, because back then, they don't do it much now that I know of, but back then, a lot of churches did things outside, right?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah,
and
like
I'm not
crusades
going
and tent
outside.
things. And yeah, you weren't going to bare bones it that much.
Park or
Okay, so we have a lot of great questions, and I know the questions are going to blossom into more of what we're doing right now. So I want to give credence. Caleb, you can mix it. So what we did for those that are maybe watching on YouTube or listening to this, all the moms that are here submitted questions that were all literally fantastic. So we felt like it wouldn't be right for us to go through and us pre-pick. So what we did is took our famous chalice that we have, and then we threw the questions in the chalice. We mixed them up, and then we're going to just call the name, and then the mom that's here will stand up, and we have a microphone, and Nancy will pass it off to them, and they'll ask. So just tell us the name of the person, and they'll ask you of the one you picked, Caleb.
Oh, I'm going first.
Yeah, you could pick it, and then don't ask the question. Just share the name of whose it is.
Okay, Muriel Lark.
Oh, Muriel.
Muriel. Oh, there we go. Hey, why don't you tell us before anyone asks? Why don't you tell us how many children you have and what are their ages, or if you have grandchildren or anything like that? Just give an idea of your motherhood or grandmotherhood before you ask the question.
I'm a mother of one,
Great.
and she's soon to be 46.
Wow, that's great.
So I'm an old mother.
Yeah.
My question is to the mothers, especially you, Pastor Cindy. Do you ever give commentary on the sermon or of the podcasts, or critique it when they give too much information?
No.
Well, talk to Dad's sermons. I mean, we have spent 30 years having your whole life
he's the
on
metric.
blast.
So
you
I
know?
think to myself, has my dad said anything more revealing and more graphic? Yes, he has. Okay, so I'm safe.
That's a great question, Miriam.
Right. No, not really. Not really. Yeah.
Oh, so you've never stuff
you
you shared
guys?
over the years. No, I think like what I'm also hearing from your question is like, when you hear something, are you going, I can't believe he said that about me. I can't believe he said that about the boys. I can't, over the
Diego,
years.
yes, when he's on the pulpit.
Yeah. I think that's what she means. Yeah.
Of course, we'll go home and I'll tell him, okay, Diego, I don't want to be mean or rude, but I want to let you know that what you said, I don't think that was very nice. It wasn't very, for the right place or the right time to say it. Definitely, I'll go home. Go home and yeah.
Do you feel like over the years he's listened to that your voice, or has he? Yeah.
The older he gets, he listens.
He's getting
more.
wiser and wiser.
Wiser and wiser. Yes. Yeah.
Is there a particular story that stands out to you of maybe a message he shared there you just said, I think that was too much? Whether it was something about you or just a story in general.
Oh gosh, you put me on a spot. No,
No,
I
it's
can't
okay
think
if
of
you don't think
anything
it,
right now.
Yeah.
No.
No. Yeah. Like, so maybe the stuff he shared over the years, he's shared about like your past and some of the struggles you had growing up, a season of your life where you were living at a park, sleeping in
Yeah.
a slide and showering at a drinking fountain, like all that stuff did you feel very confident to say, yeah,
Well,
Diego,
I'm
share
okay.
that with the world?
I'm okay because he knows my story, and I'm okay with him sharing it, but the right way. I don't know if y'all know Diego, pastor, but sometimes he'll just expand a little bit more or twist the words or the story a little bit.
It's called a preacher's exaggeration is what we call it in the church world. Yeah.
So that's where I'll get on him and say, that's not
didn't happen."
true. That didn't happen. Or it did happen, but it didn't happen that way. So, yeah. And with what you said, a little example of what he said that I got on him about, which was just recently, and we've all heard it, on the message, but he talked about sometimes he does examples or he does stories, during his
Yeah.
messages. Well, he talked about a safe.
Yeah.
I'm going,
Oh, yeah.
when I got home, I scolded him so bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that.
Yeah.
I'll I won't get mad at him. I'll just tell him, you know what? He thinks I'm getting mad at him. I don't think
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
But I'll just say, you know what? This is not the way you should have said it. You should have said this way, or not these words.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what about you, Grandma? And for context for everyone listening, Papa Diego, who I think we're almost convinced we're going to try to get him. I mean, we've already offered him to be on the podcast for Father's Day.
Yeah.
But when everybody meets him on the podcast, you'll realize why it took so much convincing if he decides to come on. But Grandpa's got all his always inappropriate jokes and everything he does. So I've grown up my whole life. He says, you have two favoritos. Your top favorito is Diego, your oldest child, because you have two others. And then your favorito grandchild is Nathan, who is our brother. And Grandpa says, "Oh, that's your grandma's favorito. Your dad and Nathan could do no wrong in her eyes. Type of thing." He said that my whole life. And so, but seeing that, like most moms tend to be kind of the most maybe critical of their kids, or maybe just expect, a certain thing from them, and so. In the same question about this with Dad over the years, just being overtly transparent, and maybe say things sometimes that in transparency he's great in the sense that Dad is so transparent that he just really wears, and that's why so many people find deliverance in the ministry is because of his transparency, and he's not faking the funk ever. But sometimes, given that benefit, we always as a family always have conversations and say, hey, in the future, could you not share that like that? Or could you not do that? Because I appreciate what you were trying to do, but I think it reads me off like this or that. Has there ever been stuff over the years that you've thought, oh, Diego, what are you doing? And then maybe you've called him or texted him and, like, hey, maybe not like that. Like in the same way, Mom, but as his mother,
Well, Diego is who he is and has been that way all his life. So I remember when he was very young, he was a teenager, and the TV series with John Travolta was on TV.
Staying Alive or
what-
Grease or something like
It,
Staying
it
Alive.
was a sitcom series, and I remember one time John Travolta in the series one thing went up to somebody and said in a real bold voice, he said, "I do what I do when I want it, and you don't tell me nothing."
Yeah, I do what I want, how I want, and when I want. No one could tell me anything about
Yeah,
it, right?
and we all laughed at the time. It was, it was a sitcom. Well, one day he's in the house, and I want him to do something. I want him to, he's got to do
This is his life story, basically.
Yeah, I want him to do something. And Diego, I've told you already twice, when are you going to do it? Nothing. Finally, I said, I was just going to get really upset with him. and then he comes up just like
John Travolta.
John Travolta, and he gives me, what was the three
I
terms?
do what I want, how I want, when I want,
And
nobody's
nobody
gonna tell
tells me anything. And I went like this, and he turned around and ran. So I knew at that time that Diego was a joker, number one. He would push as much as he could and to try to get away with it, even as a child.
He presses the line.
He presses the line. And when he got into ministry, there were many times, even early in the beginning, when he'd say things, I said, he didn't just say that, did he? And he would, because some of the things would be very embarrassing to me. And I think the things that were probably the most that I would address with him were when he would give sexual connotations or inclination. He'd move his hips like, you know how he does.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've told him, if
His
you
Botox viral.
Yeah, he recently went viral on
Yeah.
one of those
No,
church criticism meme accounts.
No, so I thought to myself later on, after when George Lopez became famous, the comedian, I said, if Diego had not been a pastor, he would have been George Lopez. Seriously, he was that good in terms of how he would present himself. But I would say that, yes, I have, and I've had some conversations with him. Diego's pretty good as far as receiving stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing, even if you talk to him, he doesn't change.
Yeah,
He still does it.
Yeah, he'll reflect on it, but once he's decided he's in the clear, he's good.
Oh, yeah.
But he is the most open to criticism
Yes.
person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dad'll take anything and he'll see the next hour and, well, hey, he's cool. I've never seen him hold a grudge to anyone or anything in my whole life. Right. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. Get some more of these mom questions in here. So I have Dolores Ibarra.
All right,
Dolores. Why don't you share your question with us? This is going to be a good one.
So my name is Dolores Ibarra. I attend ALFC Pomona. I have two children, a 26-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old son. So my question is, how do you navigate your adult children while they're dating?
Now, is that the key we want to hit, right? Adult children dating. Yeah. Because I know we got other questions in here that deal with non-adult children dating. So maybe we'll sit and park on that aspect, the adult children dating. Mom, what do you think?
Well, first of all, Pastor Diego, their dad, we said that we want them to go to college first, graduate from high school, go to college, then, you could start dating. I mean, this has been our thing their whole life. They couldn't date till they were 18.
Yeah, I was the only one who broke that, which we'll get into later.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when they got out of college, pretty much, and started dating, Caleb was the first one to start dating. We were,
as far as they know.
From their consciousness. They didn't know what you were doing in those streets.
Sequence.
Back alleyways.
well, to me, you're adults, and you grew up in a Christian home, and I believe that you would, know the values of right and wrong and how to date, be respectful, know when it was the right time to start dating, to know, what your goals are in life first, and obviously have jobs and everything before you start dating or even thinking about marriage. But we always prayed that, our children would have just the wisdom to, date the right person. And I know we're not all perfect and everything, but again, we are so blessed that we have these beautiful daughter-in-laws too, that they've married. But we always prayed that they would find somebody that they would love unconditionally, and they were Christians. They were, for me as a mother, to be honest, my thing was, when my kids start dating, I want them to know that that these girls are dating my sons, and I want them to be beautiful girls and going to be, again, in the future, daughter-in-laws that love God. Not so much, want to be with the sons and date them in that, but love God first, and then, be good Christian girlfriends and wives or whatever. And so we really didn't. I don't think we had. I don't know, maybe Dad did, but I didn't
he would
have
be more conscious of
conversations who you were dating.
Yeah.
My thing was just, I want to make sure that they love my sons.
Yeah.
And
let me put
take care of them.
Yeah, let me put a twist
Yeah.
on it then, because context is important for people too. Caleb's first girlfriend became his wife. Nathan's first girlfriend became
Right.
his wife.
Yes.
So you guys, there was nothing to wrestle there with that, really.
Yeah.
Nathan got
Right.
Nathan got engaged in what, 90 days, Sanaz? Is that what it was?
90-day fiance.
Yeah.
We dated for 5 months
Yeah.
and then married 5 months later.
Yeah.
So 10
That was
months
us.
total.
Yeah. I think
And
some
you
of
were older, more secure, and
some of my
Yeah,
Amazon
I guess.
orders take
Yeah.
longer to get to me
More mature.
than they decided to get engaged, right?
She was more independent. That's how I was with Dad.
So
Yeah.
I observed kind of two things over the years. You and Dad were like helicopter parents growing up. I mean, you guys were very strict. You had very strict rules. We could not go over just to anybody's house to hang out. Sleepovers definitely off the table.
Yep.
There was only 2 people I was allowed to sleep over. That was Pastor Mike, the children's pastor, Pastor Mark, the youth pastor.
Yep.
And that was maybe once a year, And so you guys were very, very boundaried, very strict.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was, it just, I'd have smartphones back there, but we had the little flip phones. To the point where my dad would, at any drop of dime, give me your phone. He'd take my phone and go through
See
my
who's
text
on it.
messages and see who, and he would, we had, back then you had AOL Instant Messenger, and so you'd have to, switch the phone line to go on the internet. And I remember Dad would say, log in, let me see your stuff and everything. So you guys were very, nowadays you would call it a helicopter parent, one that hovers over, but you also gave us a lot of room to think for ourselves and decide. But when it came to friends and boundaries and where you're goings and you're coming, you guys just, at the time I felt it was overwhelming, but now that I'm older, I was very thankful for it. Suffice to say that I felt like when I turned 18, you guys basically had an attitude more so as, we did our job now, you go live your life. Like, you go make your decisions on your own. You live this life by yourself. You date who you want to date.
Especially if we're not living with them.
Yeah,
I think it changes. Like, if the parent has more control, I feel, over their child if they live under their roof. If once they go and they're independent, they take care of themselves, there's nothing really a parent can do at that point. You just gotta
Yeah.
let them go.
And when
you give them counsel
college,
and advice and
yeah,
wisdom, but
I'm still
you know,
coming.
yeah.
When I was in college, some of it I lived at home and stuff like that. But it was very like, it wasn't like I was 20 and you guys were like, hey, here's when you need to be home. Like, it was literally up until the day I turned 18. It was like, what do you mean? What time you be home? You can't leave the house. Then it was 18, and then it was like, I don't, come home when you want. Like, you need to make your decisions and you need to live this life. Like, we've spent 18 years, pouring into you. But I say that to say, because when I started dating, I felt like it was very like, and that's one of my things that, I've said on stage and criticized. Like, there wasn't a lot of conversations around dating a relationship. There was just rules of, you can't date. And then now I'm dating, and I went through not only the ones hidden behind your guys' back, but the ones that you knew. I went through quite a few girlfriends that met you and knew you and stuff like that. And you've always been very gracious with all of them. But was there any point when I was in the dating process that you ever felt like I don't think this one is right for Adam, or I don't know that this is the right direction he should be going on? And how, because you never vocalized it to me.
Right.
So where did you leave that? Did you leave that for your prayers? Did you, how did you, or did you just think they were all nice, Or did you and Dad ever have conversations of, hey, I think Adam's dating this girl and it may turn out to something, it shouldn't?
No, you're right. You're right. I was very more quiet, but your dad and I did talk, about those things. And I think it was easier for him to talk to you boys because it's, father and son. Not that the mother and sons, can't talk or have that relationship, but for us, in our family, it was easier because I think of the position Dad was in with being the senior, not senior, but being a pastor and things like that. So it was easier for him to communicate things to you you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't be with this person or whatever. I might have had some feelings, but towards a person or a young lady, but like you said, some of them I probably didn't even know about.
Yeah,
But when we started getting serious, at least with my wife,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you did what any mother can do
I
and
think
should
we get
do.
excited.
Is you got to know her.
Yeah.
We would go to Disneyland together. Like, this is in the dating phase.
Yeah.
So you did actively try to befriend her and get to know her personality. You did that very well. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah.
once you knew that we were serious, you put yourself in our life. You invited her to lunches and you gave her birthday presents and Christmas gifts and and to me, like, that's the best thing. That's the most and the best thing you can do, because then it's in that befriending of the girlfriend or the boyfriend that you get to discern their character and their personality,
Right,
and then
right.
you can tell us in private, hey, like, I noticed this about her. She said this. You may want to watch out. You may want to ask
Right.
her about this. You did that.
Yeah. And
You
I
know?
know for you boys, you, Kayla, being the first one, I remember we were in Hawaii, which was our last family vacation that we took as our
Before he
family.
would- yeah.
Before he would go off and get married, because he was on our vacation and all he would do is be on that phone with her. And
We've
thought,
talked about it on here before.
Yeah, and I thought
That's what happens when your first girlfriend is also the woman you marry. You're just like, you're just
right.
all hormones
Obsessed.
and
Exactly.
emotions. And
So I mean, sometimes, you want to watch and be with that person so you can get to know him and know if that person's right for your son. And we did those things, and for me, it's like I want my sons to be happy. And if this is the person that he wants to be with and be married to and live the rest of his life with, then that's what we want. And you just pray, though. You just pray that, God just blesses that relationship, that marriage that's going to happen, and that, we just open our eyes to anything that's not there that's good. So yeah.
Do you
Do
remember?
you feel?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Do you feel like it would be more appropriate? Because I'm thinking about Miss Dolores, who asked the question, and she has one male child and one female child. And you were talking about how Pastor Diego would be the one that would kind of be able to have those conversations with the boys. I'm a boy mom. She's a boy mom. Do you think that it would be more appropriate, or it would be more beneficial for those who have the daughters for the mom to talk to them, and the ones who have sons for the father to talk to them? What would you advise women who maybe their adult child is in a relationship and they've prayed about it, but they've seen things that they just think that the child is just completely not seeing, and you want to really hone it in that that's not the person for them? How would you advise that parent on who and how they should be talking to their child?
Well, I think obviously every family's different. They have their own ways of communicating with their children, if it's the mother and son or father, son, whatever. For us personally, I think because I'm not that outspoken, I'm not that, critical, whatever, to talk to my sons like that. It's more of their dad. But, I mean, Pauline, she has a son and a daughter, so obviously she can give her opinion, but how she talks to both son and daughter, and I just have sons, so to me it's like I think their dad is better talking to them.
Yeah, and I think,
but I can still, tell you guys are, not doing this the right way, or you need to be a little bit nicer if you're not nice. I can give my own opinion.
Yeah.
Not that
and
I'm not
and it could be a little different
quiet.
because in our adulthood, we were saved by then. As we went, I wasn't saved as a teenager, but I was saved in adulthood.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do it right. And so you didn't deal necessarily with any of
Yeah.
us coming home at 3 a.m. or
Yeah.
bringing girl after girl after girl around, or opposite, boy after boy
Yeah.
after boy. So, you know, I think part of that difficulty was a little different. But I do remember, this is where I
Yeah.
sometimes think it can take a village, and it's great to tap in a village, because there are more than 5 times that I can count, Grandma, that you have pulled me aside, starting from about 15, and you would challenge me in my thinking. I remember one time, Mom and Dad found out I had a girlfriend at 15. The rule was 18. And I remember we were at an Italian spot across the street from here. You remember that Italian spot? A very long time ago. But you were like, Adam, tell me why you want a girlfriend so bad at 15. And you and I got in this like huge argument because I was trying to say, because, you know, doing the whole thing the world tells me to, like, I got, you know, I didn't say it like this, but it's essentially, I got to test out the menu. I have to see what I like. And, you know, like, it's basically that whole theme of like, how do you know what you like unless you date around? And, you know, I feel like I'm grown, and I, you know, and she likes me and I like her, and this and that. And you because I knew you, I'm sure what you knew at that time, because Dad was probably telling you behind the scenes, was I was being very difficult to Mom and Dad, no matter, because I have like Dad's personality. So if you argue with me, I'm going to argue back, and we're going to go back and forth. We're going to go back and forth. So I was being very disobedient to Mom and Dad. I was sneaking out. I had girlfriends. I was doing this. And so what I could only imagine behind the scenes was Dad was probably telling you as his mom, hey, I'm having this issue with Adam. He's not getting it. And I'm sure at the time, because whether you remember or not, you thought, well, let me come in as his grandma. Let me try to. And then as I even went to adulthood, I mean, you have set a rule for yourself that every one of your grandchildren that turn 21, you take 2 grandchildren at a time on a trip across Europe for 3 weeks. So you've done that with how many grandchildren do you have now?
11.
You have 11. So you've done that with all 11 of us. And you worked like. You in no way, Grandpa, came from wealth or anything like that. You worked for a school district. Grandpa was a plumber. So it was something that you guys intentionally, as you got older, you said, I'm taking. So I remember when I was 22, we did 3 weeks in Europe with Melissa, because you take 2 grandchildren at a time. And you had conversations with me around dating and relationships. And so why was that important to you to do? I'm sure for your kids too, but also your grandchildren, because that's what I remember, you know.
As a young mother, I had Diego first. I knew I didn't have really good mothering skills in the sense of what one would consider to be adequate mothering skills. My mother was a fabulous mother, but she raised 6 children. But she raised us like she was the sergeant and with a rod, and so much of my raising or getting to know my discipline was yelling, screaming, and you just do what you got to do. And so I was raised in that environment. And when I married Grandpa, one of the things, and then I had Diego, one of the things is that I wanted to know how to mother. I wanted to be able to treat him in the right way. So I had a neighbor who I used to be fascinated by her because I remembered my mother's skills, mothering skills. And I would listen to my neighbor who had a 2, a 4, and a 6-year-old child. And she would be outside and she'd say, Aaron, could you please come over here and help Mommy? Chris, I'd like for you to go get the rake and you bring it. And I'm like, who's she talking to?
So nice.
Right.
She being so nice
She's
too.
so
Right.
everything was a may I please,
Yeah.
can you, and all that. And I'm thinking,
Wow.
so that intrigued me. I went outside. I didn't know her that well at the time. I got to know her then. It intrigued me because these were her babies. So as I got to meet her and talk to her, I learned that she was a preschool teacher. And I said, okay, what is a preschool teacher? I didn't know. She explained it to me, and I became fascinated with preschool. So it was a few years later that I started taking preschool classes. When Diego was about 3, 3 and Brian would have been 1. I only had the 2 at the time. I said, okay, I've got to learn how to communicate. So when I had all 3, one of the things that was extremely important to me was we learn in preschool that children are, number one, smart. They learn. They're learners. They will learn immediately. So is cognitive skills, critical thinking, and problem solving. So you learn as an educator how to convey and communicate at their level, how to do critical thinking, how to problem solve, and so on. And so getting to what the question is all about, it was always a fascination for me when the boys got older. And I'm talking about more about 7. Brian would have been 7. No, I'm sorry. Brian would have been about 5, and Diego would have been about 7. I still didn't have Paulette then, but I would talk to them just in problem solving and stuff like that at their own age level. Then when they got to be teenagers, I actually would put them in the living room, like this kind of a setting, and I'd invite your dad's favorite friend over, Manuel, and I'd actually have conversations with them. I'd say, okay, adult conversation. Okay, I want you to tell me what you think about this, and then give me your, I'd go down the road. And so that's how we opened our dialogue with each other. I got to know them. When my boys were already puberty age, and I have to say this for the young mothers whose husbands aren't saved, whose husbands have no understanding about what the Bible even says. Because for men, hey, it's a challenge. Go get her. Go get that one. Go get that one. And you have like a, what do you call that?
Like a tally sheet?
Like a tally sheet. Look how many I conquered. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want my boys to be that way. Mm-hmm. I said, you ain't going to conquer, in my mind, you ain't going to conquer nobody.
Wow.
So when Diego got to be at puberty, John, like the John Travolta thing, I'll do what I want, all that kind of stuff. I remember bringing, you guys are going to get a kick out of this. I remember going to Grandpa and saying, Diego, it's time to talk to Diego. And he said, about what? I said, about...
Birds and bees?
Yeah, the birds and the bees. He says, oh, okay. And I said, but he's crude. He's crude.
Very, yeah.
And I said,
yeah.
So I said, Diego, I need for you to tell me what you're going to say to him. And he said, what do you mean, what am I going to say to him? I'm just going to tell him. And then he gave me the bang, bang, bang description. And I said, no, you can't say that. You just can't say that. He says, oh, well, what should I say? So I told him more like, you meet a girl. He said, I'm not going to mess around with that. I'm going to tell him just the way it is. And I said, do me a favor. Don't do it. I will do it. So I did. I sat Diego down, and I because the interesting thing is that sometimes mothers who have sons don't think they have these questions in their mind, and they do. Because Diego asked me very intimate questions about a girl, a teenage girl. He wanted to know when they started their period. He wanted to know what it was that a guy should feel when you're at puberty. What are the feelings? What happens? And so we went through that dialogue, and then I said, I'm assuming you're asking because you're experiencing that. Yes, okay. So have you thought about how you're going to deal with those things? We'd have a conversation about that. What do you think would be the right way to handle it and the wrong way to do it? We'd have those kind of questions. And then it finally got to the question. I said, Diego, I'm going to put you in the reverse seat. And the reverse seat is that I want you to think I want you to listen to what I'm saying. The girl that you would want to date, she likes you. She really likes you. And she wants you to like her. And so her way of liking you, or you liking her, is she may be, even though she's not wanting to do it, she may want to do something that's against what she knows she should be doing, and that is give in. Sure.
Someone's Siri went off.
And so I remember telling Diego, I said, Diego, I want you to remember that this person has a heart, a soul, and a mind. If you do whatever it is, if you go beyond the boundaries with her, you're going to crush her. You're going to hurt her. And at that time, I knew enough Bible to say, and besides that, God doesn't approve of that. We talked about the hymen, the woman's hymen. We talked about all that.
You went all into it.
I did.
Wow.
I said I wasn't going to play around with it because he was curious. I said, you know what the hymen represents and what it is? It's like a safety net for the girl until she says yes to the one she's going to marry. And I said, if you take advantage of that, you're in violation. You are going to be violating. Not only her, but you're going to violate yourself, your conscience, your principles. Anyways, so
Yeah.
I took him there. I took Brian there too, and I did the same for Paulette.
Wow.
So yeah.
Did let's go back far, but I remember in Dad's sermons, and then in a lot of Dad's sermons, he shared that when he met you, Mom, that you went over to his house. He went over to your house to pick you up, and you were living with a guy, right? You had. Or you had lived with a guy before? You lived by yourself?
Yeah, I was.
He always says you had like a little Buddha and stuff like that in your house. Yeah. But at one point, you had lived with a guy before and stuff like that. Did you know any of those aspects of Mom's background when Dad was dating her, or by then he was more of an adult? How did that process go?
As a matter of fact, because he was working at the Coina Valley, and that's where you were working. And he came home one day and he says, Mom, there's this really cute girl. And I said, oh, really? Where? And, she works at the Queen of the Valley Hospital. He says, she's a really mature woman.
A mature woman?
I said,
sounds like you.
And I'm thinking, I'm saying, what? And he says, she's really mature. She lives on her own. And I said, to me, that was mature.
Yeah.
I said, oh, God, that's nice, Nathan. I mean, Diego.
Your other favorito. See?
It came out.
Yeah, get ready.
Freudian slip.
Anyways, he told me that, yes, he...
Get Nathan in here right now, and Grandma will start, bubbling and get all giddy and happy, and.
He told me about your mom and the fact that she was, she worked and she paid her. And this really fascinated him about her because not only did she have her own place, but she, had her job. But I guess through conversations he learned, she knows how to pay her own bills. She knows how to budget her money. He didn't know nothing, Cindy. You know that. He didn't know.
You still do all the bills.
And things like that just fascinated him. And I said, you know what, Diego, that sounds like someone you might be interested in. And he said, yeah. So that's how I met your mom. And then when he brought you over, we got to be friends. And yes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Caleb, you want to do the next question?
Oh,
Honors on the next one.
Tamisha Adams.
Tamisha. In the back. There we go. All right. Go ahead and stand up. Oh. You were going to have somebody else what? Oh, someone else was going to read it? Oh, sorry, Tamisha. Sorry.
Okay, I'm Misha. I have 4 kids.
What are their ages?
She'll be 16,
Ooh.
9, 4, gonna be 5, and then 8.
Wow.
No, I have too many. 16,
Wow.
9, 6, and 4.
Wow.
Those are their ages. And my question actually relates to the last question is, how as a mother can I navigate with my 16-year-old as she wants to start dating and keep her safe?
Mm-hmm.
That's my question.
That's a good question.
Well, Pauline, you have the daughter.
Even after, I'm sure those that have daughters and have had daughters and have had those conversations with your daughters, you've already set the boundaries. You've already, they know the principles that are the expectations. And yet, children will be children because they're going to test the boundaries. And as I said, in the earlier years, my husband just wasn't a believer at all. It was really all coming from me. And so even though I worked with Paulette as much as I could, I'm happy that eventually she did get married. But we had a testing period with her. And she, at the time, which is just like now, you have your peer pressure. If you're insecure, which she was very insecure, she's looking for love because my husband was not a loving man. He did not know how to reach out and, be a loving father. He was a good man in terms of provider and all that, but he didn't know how to be a loving father to her. So she was reaching out to boyfriends and doing all the things that many have done, say. So I had to really, really pray for her deeply and challenge her in a lot of ways. So it was a real road up and down. And then finally, she got married when she was 20. Yeah.
You've also had a lot of, you have 11 grandchildren, and a lot of them also are female also.
Yeah.
And you've played a very matriarchal role in the Mesa family. Your voice carries a lot in all the Mesas. You are much akin for us as a matriarch, which means, and when I say that, it means your voice does carry more weight amongst the family than Grandpa's voice. And so the Mesas are more matriarchal than patriarchal in that sense. And so I say that to say, you like your voice with the grandchildren, it rings and it echoes, and all the grandkids could be just in sin, and it's still, oh man, I can't disappoint like if I see Grandma. The biggest thing we know, and at least us, me, Nathan, and Caleb, we found the Lord at an early age in our youth, but not all of your grandchildren have or had.
Right.
And so what I know is you have had some hard conversations with your grandchildren,
Yes.
Not only about their lives, but in dating also.
Yes.
Like, what have you also done in a matriarchal sense when you're having conversations with our cousins who are male or female, but a lot of them are female, and we're speaking to some more of those teenage daughters as well. How have you spoken into their lives in this process as well, when maybe you're not the parent, you're not the loudest voice,
No.
but your opinion does weigh kind of some of the most on us. So how have you addressed those things?
It's something when you are in the role I'm in, because as you said, I'm not the mother, but I am the grandmother. But I have always attempted to have a great relationship with all of my grandchildren. So I've invested time with them, communicating with them, and so they have also come back to me. So whenever they have attempted to come to me and want to be around me, they know if you want to be around me,
You get all of Grandma.
yeah. And I don't pull any punches,
Right.
Because we will small talk it. I'll do the game kind of thing. Let's
Yeah.
say whatever's, yeah.
Right.
But then finally, they don't even realize it that I'm kind of roping them in, because then they begin to open up their life. They begin to tell me what they're into. They begin to tell me what they're doing.
Right.
And then I have to take those opportunities to, first of all, not judge them in the sense of turning them off. I do listen to them, listen through everything. And then I also, is the same way I used to do with your dad, I do the question, are you saying that what you're doing it's okay?
Yeah.
Or are you happy that no, because I'll just say this, that because all of my grandchildren were raised in Christian homes, all of them, but not all of them have taken the Christian path. And so when you ask them, are you still a believer? Yeah, in name, but they're not living the lifestyle. So when I've had to have those conversations with them, it has been more of you shouldn't. I can't do that. All of my grandchildren are adults now, but I can let them know that that their decisions to do whatever it is they're doing will eventually at one point or another have a consequence. And they're going to, and I have to find the delicate ways to say it.
Yeah.
But they're going to, in other words, reap what they sow. And I always use me as the frame of reference in that. You see me, and you've known me all your life. You see I'm an old lady now. I've lived a long time. I've been where you're at. I've seen a lot. And I would hate for you to get to be where I am and then be remembering my words that Grandma said, I'm going to reap what I sow.
Wow.
And I ended up with the emptiness, say, in my life. So in that answer, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. And to what you're saying, there's a very profoundly, I have a lot of significant moments with Mom and you. One about you, though, was, and Mom and Dad have actually exhibited this in our life, too. But and I know you'll know this, but there was a moment, we were on our trip, you took me, I was 22, so it was, 11, 12 years ago. And we were having dinner in Rome, and you told me about a marital issue that you and Grandpa were in. Mm-hmm. And you asked me, you said, I'm mad at your grandpa. What do you think about that? Am I right or wrong about how I feel about Grandpa right now? Mm-hmm. And I remember, I'm 22 years old. I don't even have a girlfriend. I'm single at the time. And I'm thinking, why does my grandma care whether I'm in agreement, whether she's mad at Grandpa or not? Like, what does it matter? Who am I? And I gave you my thoughts and my opinion. And I know you did in that same season. You did it with Caleb. You did it with Nathan, because we've all talked ever since then. And they've said, yeah, Grandma around that time asked me and shared. And I thought to myself, if my grandma at her age can tell me her problems in her marriage and ask me my 2 cents, like, to me, it was very formidable. Like number one, I should be able to receive criticism from her if she's asking criticism from me. I mean, you of all people could be like, Adam, I've lived life, like, just do what I tell you to do. And you asked me my 2 cents on your marriage and you as a person. And I'm thinking, then your criticisms of future are receptive that much more, because I'm like, she's asked me about herself. And that really always left a big imprint on me, that I didn't feel like I had to fake the funk because my grandma faked the funk and my mom and dad faked the funk. And then I remember at probably 21 or 20, Nathan, remember if it in here, you and Dad sat us down and we're like, hey, your mom and dad are having some issues in this way. I think that your mom's overreacting in this way. She thinks that I'm coming down too hard on it. What do you guys think as our children that see us every day? And I'm like, what in the world is what is going on? And one of the biggest, not like that to me was like so formidable now going into marriage to go, oh, wow. Like, now as I'm an adult, they're treating me like an adult and they're making me have some adult conversations. Made me realize relationships took adult conversations that was not outside of, when I was 16 and I had girlfriends, it was all about celebrating our anniversary and, I got you this little cookie with our 1 year on it. And because there's no weight, and so it's all about the fun. It's all about making out behind the stairs or whatever else, but then you get in like adulthood and you're in a real relationship and there's real implications on the line to either do this good or bad. There's children at stake, there's money at stake, there's jobs at stake. And so those two things from your guys' exampleship to that you neither of you to me have ever faked the funk, and even with your husbands have ever faked the funk with us. Yeah.
Can I add something to that? Because this is something that kind of the main heart of my controversial statements about women that, Adam misinterpreted. No, I'm just kidding. that people give me a hard time for. And this would be last week's episode, so women, take this into account if you're mad at me. This is the heart of what I was basically saying was, because I could be wrong, but I foresee that there's going to be an epidemic within the church of Christian wives divorcing their husbands for unbiblical justifications. And because we see it in the statistics right now, where 80%, some as high 80% of divorces now are being initiated by women. And churches Christians are reflecting the same statistics of divorce, 50%. And so really the point of the statements that I've been making, that I made last week in the podcast, you'll hear if you heard, is the high standard of a Christian wife and mother. And to me, you two are the perfect example of that in different ways. You are the one, so Mom, you remained submissive and obedient and faithful to the headship of your husband through years of having to raise your sons with virtually an absent father. And you had to do virtually everything. You know, we never had a fishing. He never taught us fishing. A lot of these life skills and lessons he didn't teach us. You were the only one there up until we were 12, 13, 14, into our teens, our most developmental years. And yet you remained submissive. You remained obedient under his headship. You followed him. You allowed him to make the final decision, and you followed it. As hard as it got, you followed it. And so you remain committed. And I think, you know, women who are maybe struggling, am I justified to divorce as a Christian woman because my husband is a grown child and I have to take care of everything and I have to do everything and he's not doing anything around the house. Okay, but that was your example. That's what you did, and you remained faithful. And you're the model of a Christian wife and a godly Christian wife. And then you are on another end of the spectrum where you remained submissive and obedient and faithful to your husband, who was acted as much as an unbeliever as a man could be.
Yep.
He was the stereotypical
Machismo.
unbelieving husband. He virtually did everything that a wife can justify a divorce for.
Right.
And yet you've always had a gentle, a humble, a quiet spirit. You endured hell. You've always been a submissive woman, an obedient woman, a soft-spoken woman. And so I just want to lay that out here. I mean, that's really like the emphasis of my remarks about women. And these are two models of holding to that high standard of being a biblically faithful wife when your husband doesn't meet, when you have every excuse under the book to abandon ship and to divorce, you know?
Well, for me, to be that way is you may not think, but I do learn a lot from Mama Pauline. I mean, we know what she's gone through, and for her to stay strong and stay faithful to her husband, no matter what, and be in prayer. I didn't grow up, like I said, in a Christian home. I was young on my own, so of course I had to grow up fast, and I didn't have those
Examples? Or,
yeah, well, yeah. You know, I didn't have someone to help me and to teach me and to, you know, be patient with a husband or whatever. So when I married your dad and, you know, I loved him. Yeah, he's not, you know, we're not perfect. And you just got to pray. You just got to stay in that prayer that they're going to change and that they're not going to do these things or say these things. And then growing up with you children, you know, it was difficult when Dad went through his cancer. That's not easy because you're more of a caretaker. And then, again, trying to raise 3 children. Still, you know, the 2, Nathan and Caleb, the more adult. You were still in high school. I could have, you know, left a long time ago because I didn't, you know, want to be patient enough to be around him, take it, because, you know, they get in that mindset and they're mean and they're ugly, you know, when you're sick like that. And again, a lot of people leave.
Yeah.
You know, the spouses will leave.
Yeah.
I said, no, I have a husband. he's going through this. I need to be there for him. I need to, take care of him, and yet take care of my children too. And but thank God the two are old enough to kind of be more independent, where I have Adam that I'm taking care of because he's still at home in high school. And I remember Dad and I,
well, I just finished high school when he got
yeah, you were
diagnosed.
a senior.
But I was,
you were
I was going into college, which
graduating.
I still needed
Right.
you guys for a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But again, I've just learned so much from Pauline about being patient with your spouse, because she sure was, and to be loving and caring and patient, and to me, the word says, you're not here to leave your spouse. If there's a good reason, the word gives you a good reason to do that. Well, my reasons weren't enough to leave. So I wanted to be the best wife, best mother. Now try to be the best grandmother. So no, that wasn't in my vocabulary or my spirit to leave. Yeah, to just love my family.
Yeah.
And do the best I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Grandma?
I met my husband when I was 15 years old. And then 2 years later, I was married. So 2 years later. So I was married at 17. At 18, I had my first baby. My husband was 2 years older than I, so he was 19. When we talk now, we both share about, we're saying, we were kids when we got married. We didn't know nothing, absolutely nothing. And so we grew up together. The difference between Diego and I was that I came from a really wonderful family-oriented household. There were 6 children. I had a wonderful mother and father. I had extended families of aunts and uncles. I mean, your dad's probably shared that with you. There were oodles and oodles of aunts, uncles, and cousins. So we were always together. Everywhere we went, we were always together. And so when my boys were little, my children learned how to be around my family. And because of that, I need to say this because maybe some of you young ladies might be facing this too. Money was always an issue with us because my husband didn't finish high school. I did graduate, but I was in the early years just a housewife. So we were living on minimum wage, trying to support a household feed and everything. So our arguments were a lot about money. And finally, my husband said, I'm going to get 2 jobs, which he did. My husband was the best supporter. He had a full-time job, and then he got a second full-time job. So that's 16 hours a day that he was away from home. And so you know how that is. Mom is taking care of the whole household and stuff. And with that said, as the years passed, the exhaustion of the 2 jobs kept him further and further away and apart from us. And that's when he started working at Sears and, got that and his Sears experiences and stuff. But then that's where
robbing Sears.
Yeah, robbing Sears. Yeah, I mean, we're serious when we say that.
Yeah.
But that's where he began his womanizing. And so, you're young. I was young. I was raising my children. And when you hear of it, anybody that's gone through it, it is the most heart-wrenching thing to have to go through. Mm-hmm. You're broken, and you're broken. So I remember, I'll never forget the day that I got married. That day I got married, my mother looked at me and said, you can never, ever get a divorce. And if you ever want to leave your house, don't come back to my house. Mm-hmm. So when all of this began to happen, I said, I can't get a divorce and I can't go home to Mom. So I stayed. I was still, I was about my 30s about that time. That's when I started going back to school. And so we made the best of what was a very bad situation. In those days, when we're talking about the 60s, there was no counseling. Mm-hmm. You kind of kept your problems to yourself. There's no one to share with. So you're trying to figure out life. And that was what I was trying to do. So then when it happened the second time, I said, wait a minute, what am I doing wrong? Well, I blamed myself the first time too. Then I blamed myself the second time too. And then I thought, no, something's wrong with this. I mean, I look at it this way, and I know our young ladies today are a lot more smarter than I was because I kept saying to myself, I kept blaming me. There's something, I'm not doing something. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. I'm not, but whatever it was. And I never held him accountable for any of it because there was no agencies to be able to say, go get counseling. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even, there was no counseling at church because we were Catholics. You didn't go to a priest and say that. So there again, we're trying to figure out the home situation. And it wasn't until, maybe about 20 years later that I realized I was the problem in the sense of I was stupid. I was dumb. And I had to get smart. I reached out and got help. And I realized that I had allowed my husband to do what he was doing because I had not in any way put any pressure on him or set any guidelines for us to get well or anything like that. Because every time we'd reconcile, we love each other, we're going to make this work, with. And for him, it was cool because he was out there having his good time. For me, I'm trying to mend a broken heart through all these horrible things. So was it difficult? Extremely difficult. So I was asked, I one time remember going to my former female pastor, and I had a counseling session with her. And she knew what was happening. My female pastor told me, she looked at me because she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to leave him. I want to get a divorce. She looked at me, she said, how selfish you are. Don't you know that you may be the only person that's going to be praying for him to get saved? I would suggest that you stay. And I'm thinking, I went to you to get counseling. And this is the answer I got.
To which God would have blessed you, though, because you have that allowance. Jesus gave that allowance for
Correct.
infidelity, but you took the higher road.
I did. And so what happened, though, was she recommended me at that time. We had Kenneth and Gloria Copeland in at the camp meeting, or at our church. They were going to hold a camp meeting in Long Beach. And they were having some guest speakers, Marriage on the Rocks, by Kent and Drew Axtell. She said, I want you to go to this camp meeting with Kent and Drew Axtell. It's called Marriage on the Rocks. She said, I want you to listen to them. I want you to buy the tapes. I want you to do everything. If after you listen to them and you are convinced that you want to divorce your husband, then, bless you, go and divorce. That was my saving grace for me because the whole teaching was on the book of Hosea. The whole book was on the book of Hosea. And then anybody that's read Hosea knows that Hosea is used as an allegory for the children of Israel. But it's to show how Israel has prostituted and done everything against God and stuff. And then the couple had on both sides done the adultery situation, and their marriage had mended. So I pledged that night, I took a vow to God that I would go ahead and pray for my husband, pray for a better marriage, and ask God to help me work through all the bitterness and forgiveness and stuff. And the beautiful thing is that God is faithful, because the one thing that I would never, ever have been able to hold on to the marriage with is to have a broken heart and a bitter attitude. I didn't want to get to be my age and be an old, bitter woman. One day, and I had been praying and praying and praying. One day, I'm going to work. I'm at the copier, and I'm just copying my material, and I'm standing there, and I'm just thinking about God and His goodness. And all of a sudden, it was the presence of the Holy Spirit there. I am copying, and all of a sudden, nobody is around. I feel a warmth, and I'm not talking about just a little warmth. It was like a heat lamp going through, say, from my toes. I felt a heat going from my toes through my whole foot, through my ankle, through my legs, and then finally to the torso. When it got to the torso, it was like I was on fire because I was like perspiring, and then it got here, and then finally to my brain, right in here. I immediately, I'm at this copier, and I'm seeing these words literally leave my body. Bitterness, unforgiveness, jealousy, envy, every of the words that were holding me down, all of the strongholds that had taken place, the hatred, the anger, the sleepless nights, everything, all of those things just shot out of my body, and they were like going out like that: bitterness, jealousy, unforgiveness, anger, infidelity, everything. And it was like maybe, it seemed like about 10 minutes, but I'm sure it was about a minute when it all happened. I stood still like that, and I remember, because I'm still hot, I remember saying, "What just happened?" And I said to myself, because we know what to do, girls, I said, "I feel like I'm released. I feel like everything's gone. Everything, all that sadness is gone. My broken heart is no longer." So then the Lord said, try to recall a thought, one that will bring that memory and that emotion back to you. Any one of the, well, I had 50,000, right?
Wow.
So I brought 2 or 3 of those thoughts back to my mind, and I tried to get back into that brokenness, feeling horrible, feeling bad about myself. And the moment I attempted to get that in my psyche, it would go shoo, shoo, shoo. And I remember standing in that copier room saying, "You healed me. I don't ever have to be like that again. I never have to feel hatred and anger ever again." That was the day that I fell in love with my husband again.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Is it appropriate to clap after that moment?
Amazing. I know. That was beautiful.
Wow.
Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
Thank you, Grandma.
Wow.
That was
Welcome.
incredible. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Going on to the next one. All right. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, we'll do this one. And Alexandria Garcia. Alexandria?
I have, well, my name is Alexandria. I have 5 children. I have 3 children of my own, 3 boys. And I have 2 bonus children, an adult 25 and 21. And then my younger sons are 8, 5, and 2. I'm not going to look at anyone and get nervous.
Wow.
Okay. I'm just going to read the first part of that question. How were you able to guide your children through times when they have been steered off their path or been influenced by others, like young children?
I would like to speak on behalf of is it a 2-year-old? Is it
No, like I'm talking about my older children, but when they were younger, like in their teens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about preschoolers. Excuse me.
Right. So I want to read just make sure clear. You're asking about the approach a mother would take as children maybe have bad peer influences as teenagers, or have strayed off maybe through disobedience or doing life their own way. Yeah. Do you have anything, Mom, on more? I know Nathan and Caleb they weren't perfect. They had their own issues, but they weren't.
I was close to perfect.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
You've gotten worse and worse as the years gone by. You started off close to heaven, and then now you're here. So Nathan and Caleb, I mean, though they had the issues and stuff, they didn't have those type of issues. But I more so did is some stuff you don't know about, some stuff you know about. So I know as I was a lot of times doing my own stuff or frustrated you and Dad, and I wasn't always following the Lord, and it was probably worse than you guys knew or realized. But how did you guys approach that or think about that and process disciplining us in that way?
Well, again, the only the part I remember is, again, not Caleb and so much Nathan, but you, is when you were going to college, when you and Caleb, went to John MacArthur. That's where we said, okay, they're going off the beaten path here. Again, we talked about it, we prayed about it, and and sometimes you just got to leave it to God, put it in His hands, and that's what we did. It was hard. I mean, Dad could probably talk about more of it because he's talked to you guys more of it, because you guys get into this big theological, conversations and stuff, and but again, we just prayed about it. But he's always the one that's giving us trouble. But look at him now, all three of them.
Look at me now. That's my life's motto. Look at me now.
Staying in prayer and.
Well, I was still
God.
a believer when I was at MacArthur's. I mean, I think.
But I think still, but I mean, to them, it
to-
still would have been a
yeah.
deviation from their plan or what
We're
they
not
what
saying
they
Well,
he
like,
did.
do you
had
remember?
hoped
Well,
for.
specifically when
Pacific
Adam was a
College
hellraiser in his teenage years, do you remember like any sort of like internal struggle with the decisions that he was making when he would do his hair the way he wanted, that was against what you and Dad wanted, or came with a tattoo, or the relationships, the friends he would have?
No.
You never.
No.
Okay.
Well, here's why I think you're.
Well, because we think, like you said, the hair. Well, they're going to outgrow that. These are just life things that you'll outgrow.
Well, here's
And-
why I think you're saying it the way that you're saying it.
Okay.
Is because, no, truly, because though I had my secrets and I was doing my own stuff, you and Dad had complete non-negotiables in the house.
Yeah.
And I felt that pressure that I legitimately thought at that age that you guys have no problem taking my life from me if I don't obey the boundaries that is seen by your eyes. And so some of those things were non-negotiable on family things. I don't want to go to that. I don't care. I will, and you guys would tell us. Number one thing I remember a lot of times was we never got stuff just for breathing. Like there were rewards based off of, hey, if you want a new Xbox, okay, then you need to pick somewhere to volunteer in children's church. You need to go to church every Sunday. You need
a lot had to do with
a lot
church.
of it had to do with
Yeah, we lived at church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think whether you guys were in full-time ministry or not, your approach would have been exactly the same, which is we do not reward you for breathing.
Yeah.
We reward you for living up to standards and disciplines that this house values. And the moment I had felt, and I had known specifically from Dad that would speak on behalf of you, but one of the great things you would always say is you never gave me an impression that you and Dad were not equally on the same page. So
Right.
I could never get something from you that I could sneak around Dad and I can get it from Mom. You would always say, if that's what your dad said, I don't know what to tell you, Adam. You guys were always very unified, and Dad would say the same thing. If Mom told you that, that's what Mom said. But it was usually more so you would emphasize what Dad was saying, and probably just because we were all boys.
Yeah.
But the biggest things I remember was like going to church multiple times a week was non-negotiable. Serving in church was a non-negotiable. Being on our family Friday night dinners. As I became a teenager, every Friday night at 3 o'clock, about 3 or 4 o'clock, you and Dad would end work and we would meet you guys either at Cheesecake Factory or as we became a little older, 16, 17, they were 18, 19. And it was, hey, Friday night dinner until you go start your own family, you're going to be a Friday night dinner thing. On rare occasions you can't. So I think it maybe seemed as though I wasn't so straying because you guys had so many built-in standards that I knew if I didn't do those things, you would take my car away. I knew you were paying my insurance. You were paying my gas. I knew you would strip those away. I knew you would have took my phone. Like there was nothing in my head that thought I had all these privileges from my parents that came with no strings attached. The only thing that I know for sure growing up I had a privilege to do was to go into the fridge. Everything else in the home was to be earned, and it was not something like, so you guys had no problems taking an Xbox away. You had which I think, at least when I'm doing a lot of parenting counseling nowadays, a lot of the way we're raising our kids is they get so much freedom to choose to go to church.
Oh, yeah.
When they want to go to church, the
choices.
moment they get a car, it just, there's so much freedom within their life with no repercussions.
Yeah.
That then it becomes harder to kind of drop the hammer. And so
But
whether
the question is that, okay, so they did, like structurally, they did everything right, okay? But you still went into these immoral, backslidden areas of your life because you were really good at hiding it. So if you were to advise them how to better parent you as a teenager to be more discerning of what you're doing in private, what would you tell them?
The only thing we had missing, which is what I think Grandma spoke to, what she did with Dad, that Dad didn't necessarily do with us, which her talking about the woman's body and sex. And I mean, I had all these raging hormones. In junior high, I was fat and overweight. And then in high school, I joined cross country and I got a job at Zoomies. And so I'm dressing super great because I work at a retail store. And then I lost like 50 pounds. And so I was a good looking kid. So I got a lot of attention. I had a job at 16 and then I had a thing. And so no one was around me to talk to me about, I heard sermons on stage and I would go to youth ministry, but that's by time I remember going to youth ministry and them telling me if you have sex or do other these things, you're going to hell, I'd already done them all. So and they never really showed me the grace of Christ. They just showed me the judgment of God. And so I thought, well, I'm already damned. And no one was talking. No one wanted to get to know me, except for I do remember a couple times Grandma did. But we didn't have, because I was the youngest, that exact type of relationship that maybe she did with Nathan at that age, right? And so the only thing I would say that I would have loved differently is what I've heard from Grandma that she did with Dad, which was sat down at a living room table and been like, talk us through X, Y, and Z. I don't think I had a real conversation with you and Dad till I was like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
I think that's when the first time I felt like I was seen by you guys, which I would have loved to have gotten that at 12 and 13, which
I agree.
yeah. And your gift mom has always been like, your boys can do no wrong. So I'd come home.
And I think, you know, with that is because of my background, how I grew up. I didn't want to be so strict with you, and I didn't want to, you know, not
push us
let
out.
you because of, you know.
Because you were pushed out as a teenager.
Yeah. So, so I'm not going to do that to my kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's, which, you know, if I had, and I did have Mama Pauline, but I didn't have that mother figure or anything when I was younger. So, if I had that, I would have done that. You know, if I was taught that.
That's why I think the scripture is true.
Yeah.
You train your child in the ways of the Lord, and when they get older, they will not depart from it. What it doesn't say is you be your child's best friend,
Exactly.
and then they won't. I appreciate it. When I look back, I appreciate the boundaries, because when the Lord did save me, there was enough infrastructure that I was ready to. I mean, salvation was not hard for me when you led me, because some people know and some people don't. Caleb led me to Christ at 17, and when my dad didn't lead me to Christ, my mom didn't lead me to Christ, my older brother led me to Christ, and so when that happened, the foundation was there. I mean, I just boom, 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 and I wasn't perfect. You know, I had times in college I still made poor decisions, but there was the foundation there that was like, I get it. I know what my parents did. I know the local church is the answer. I know that a relationship with the Lord is the answer. I've never had that for myself. You know, it all started to piece together because of the foundational principles you guys taught us. But what I did want growing up was someone just to sit down with me and say, well, let's talk about these emotions you're having. Like, why do you want these girls' attention so bad? I mean, I remember I prized it. At one time in high school, I had 11 girlfriends at the same time, you know? That was before technology and all that. And so the way I'd always package it was, hey, you know that my dad doesn't let me date. And Dad was very quote unquote famous by that time. Everyone knew who, at least in Rancho and beyond,
celebrity.
you knew everyone knew who he was. So the girls would go along with it. They'd be like, oh, you'd be Romeo and Juliet thing. Like, yeah, your parents can't find out about it. And so I'd say, yeah, no PDA, no this. And then I, whatever, sneak out and go take one on a date or do this or that, because I was desperately trying to find value from other people. And so that I wish I hashed out at a younger age from my parents. But outside of that, like it really, the foundational principles were there and established by you guys, so that when I did find the Lord, I knew that wasn't any question to me. Well, now how do I pursue a relationship with him? You guys showed me that. It didn't get to here yet. It didn't get to the heart until the Lord saved me. So that's where I did really value. I loved those rules that you guys had established, the non-negotiables, because it made me honor, number one, your guys' work that you put in to give us the things you gave us, which you, Mom, were the one that wanted to give us a different life than you had. So you were very set on getting us the latest game console or whatever, even when you guys didn't have a lot of money, because you wanted us to have a different life than you had growing up. And that was apparent to me. And so I also had enough understanding of you and Dad's history and past that I honored your guys' hard work. So no matter how wild I got or disobedient, I always still, because you guys kind of demanded that, I always had the respect for you guys. I always honored you guys in that way, which led me to more of a privacy type of thing. But I wouldn't. I'd still advise parents to do what they did.
If you're gonna err on that side.
Exactly.
I mean, err on the side
with including with getting to know them as individuals.
Discipline, control,
Take them on individual dates. Take them on individual. Like Grandma said, sit them all in a living room. Probe them. Get to know them for who they are, because you're very different than I am. Nathan's very different. For most of our childhood, we were all equals. It was just what everyone's doing, we're doing what everyone's doing, And so that led me to be like, well, they're perfect, so I just got to keep going in my little silent bubble of rebellion and just live a separate life. And I'll have Sunday Adam, and then I'll have Monday through Saturday Adam. But I always trusted that you guys were coming from a place of love. I just disagreed with the way you guys wanted to do it. But now I look back at it and I go, no, I see what
Grandma,
I see what they're doing.
What do you think to answer that question?
Oh, well, I'm just even thinking of my children in that, and because you had your 3 boys and the way you raised them, I know that for my children, and you know this too, that each of them are individuals. I found that raising boys was easier than raising a daughter. And
Me too.
And I know, and we all know here, that Diego and Brian are different. I mean, Diego,
very different.
They are very different, yet they're only 20 months apart. But when you see my son Brian and you talk to him, he's very calm, very at peace, very cool, right?
Yeah, you never see him go below the octave of this.
No, I mean, and you're like, are you Diego's brother? Because Diego, and yet both of them took to heart the principles that we instilled in them, and I believe that they went off and did their, and have had very successful lives and stuff. Paulette, at the same time too, being a girl, it was like I said, she's 9 years younger than Diego, 7 years difference than Brian. So she was, at the time that she was born, the boys were already well into their older years, and Diego certainly did not want to have anything to do with Paulette. So she was really she was almost raised as an only child. At that time, I was already busy. I was going to school. I was working, doing everything. I did not get to invest the same time with Paulette that I did with my 2 boys. She was really raised by my mother-in-law, Alice, my mother-in-law. And so I talk to her now and I say, Paulette, but don't you remember this? Don't you remember that? And she has to remind me, no, Mom, I wasn't part of that. You didn't teach me this. You didn't teach me that. So in that respect, I feel so guilty about that. I neglected her as a daughter. I neglected to do what I did for my boys. And so that's why I've tried to as we all do, we try to make it up, But I just want to say that I all 3 And as you will all learn that even though you go through ups and downs in life with the children, they eventually will get it. It just requires a lot of prayer. It requires a lot of conversations. It requires a lot of you taking the time. And if I could give any kind of counseling, it would be, do not start off with a critical, judgmental attitude when you're going to try to. Do not do
Wow,
that.
that's good.
Because that's the first way, or you're going to
And they'll
push them
pick up
away.
on it. They'll pick up on it.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, and they'll shut down.
If you
Yeah.
can love them for who they are, where they're at, and then ask yourself the question, how did they get to be where they're at? What role did I play?
Yeah. Let them talk. I remember when we were at that spaghetti restaurant, you said, and I was 14 or whatever, you said, help me to understand
Yes.
why you want a girlfriend.
Yeah.
You didn't, I didn't get your opinion for actually until I asked. You didn't get, I was like, why are you asking all this, Grandma? What do you think? And then you didn't, you bombed it on me, but a lot of it was you at first just probing.
Yeah.
Adam, why do you want a girlfriend? Why is it important to you? And I had to talk,
Yeah.
and then you fished through my talking, rather where when I remember I was caught with the girlfriend from Dad, I mean, it was immediately stripped, phoned. I don't remember I said a single word, which then caused me to isolate more and just keep doing and just get better at my secrets, But I had always felt like I could tell you anything. And then from my mom, I just always knew that mom was, I could come home with all F's and my mom would be like, you're smart. Don't listen to that report card. Recently we found my 1.4 GPA report card, and I just remember I'd come home with that stuff, and my mom would be like, "Don't listen to the school. You're gonna do great things one day." That was always Mom. You just you could be standing in front of her without a limb, and she'd be like, "It's gonna grow back. Just give it time." That was always her heart and stuff like that. Which I knew that's what I would go to with Mom for that stuff. She was just always the one that was just like, don't worry about it. And I could imagine now knowing your background of kind of the hell you went through of taking care of yourself, that you're probably looking at whatever we're going through and going, son, it really ain't all that bad.
Yeah, it could get a lot worse.
It could be a lot worse. It could
Living
be
in
all
your
right.
car at 16.
Yeah, you could be living in your car, living in a slide at a playground and taking baths in the water fountain. I guess, I guess what we were going,
just about, being a teenager. I think a lot of us, we look back on our teenage years and we don't even know how we're alive and how we how we got through it and whatnot. And as moms, we do the best that we can to train them up in the way that they should go.
Yes.
And we have to hold on to that scripture. And a lot of times, as long as we are standing firm in the way that we're parenting them through these seasons and we're praying for them, we have to give it to God that our children are going to come back.
Yes.
And they're going to come back stronger. And to really give it to God, continue to pray, and have peace over that.
Yes.
We worry about our children when they begin to go in a direction we don't want them to. And having the dialogue with them, but at the same time saying, I have peace that Scripture is true, that I have trained this child, and I'm going to continue to pray and do what I need to do to stand in the midst of it. But then have the peace that God's going to do what He needs to do, and just patiently wait for them to come back.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's do two quick, brief, more ones. With ladies, you're the only audience we have in here. Is this good stuff for you guys? Are you guys enjoying it? Okay, good. You're the first time we can actually get feedback from an audience. Otherwise, we honestly in the podcast sometimes we go, "You think anyone will like it?" and then we'll get feedback and people did. We're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, they like talking. People like hearing about that." Caleb, go ahead. We'll do two more and close it out.
Okay, Destiny Solis.
Destiny, where you at? Okay.
Hi, I'm Destiny Solis. I have two boys. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it's very challenging most days. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I'm with them all day long. My question is about discipline, kind of what you're talking about right now. What did you learn, or what were some things that benefited you parenting, going from one child to multiple? because I kind of feel like sometimes my boys are a little bit too smart than their own good, and I just kind of want to know what worked for you guys.
Did you say the ages of your boys again?
7 and 4.
7 and 4. Okay, yeah. And your thoughts are disciplining them appropriately and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was easy for me to discipline when I just had one. My oldest was a yes, ma'am. Yes, right away. My youngest is a menace to society. He seriously is so crazy, and he's such a little instigator at times.
Yeah, that's great. Grandma or Mom,
You want to
any
answer,
thoughts on
Cindy?
disciplining?
Well, yeah, like we've talked before, we were very strict with our boys, very disciplined. Again, we're going back to where we started the church, and Dad was very busy with the church, starting it and everything. So, again, I was the one at home taking care of the 3 boys, and I thought I did a pretty good job disciplining them.
Yeah.
Telling them what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
I would
And
take
you
them
and
to
Dad believe in
school
corporal punishment. So
Oh, yeah.
I have
Yeah.
Olivia's
They
question
would've
here,
they
which we won't
would've
get to, which is don't spare the rod, type of
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
I don't remember too much of spanking or hitting you guys. We would
Not
just
Nathan
kind
and
of
Caleb,
like
maybe,
threaten them. Yeah, I think back then because the what were those your games, your Xboxes and all that. That was
GameCubes and
their
Game Boys.
punishment. Yeah, we'd take that away from them. But you have to discipline your children. If they're not doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, you got to discipline. It's either, I don't believe in hitting. I don't believe, in spanking and all that because we didn't do it. But again, back to where
This is where short-term memory loss comes into.
Yeah, Dad did.
Dad
A couple times.
yeah,
A couple
yeah,
times.
yeah.
I did it.
I remember a couple times.
Mine was weekly for sure.
Yours were weekly.
Yeah, I probably
Again,
got the scars to
it was
still
probably
prove it.
okay. You do it, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I believe in discipline, and it's hard because now I'm going back to my grandchildren to where the oldest one, does something, then the youngest one will do what the oldest one does. It's kind of not like the opposite
Yeah.
that I see, right? So yeah, I believe in disciplining them, but. And again, you got to talk with your spouse, your husband, your wife, and see what works for you. Again, it wasn't hitting. Well, if Dad spanked you, I mean, I never did. It was more taking away the games, and
I think it's
you
the
can't
degrees
do
of the
this or go
personality.
somewhere.
Like you have to know what motivates.
Yeah.
What motivates each child for course correction. So for Nathan, all it took is a scowl from you guys and he would cry.
Right. We just yell at him.
Yeah, it needs to be custom tailored.
Yeah.
I found that with my kids. It has to be because what works
Yeah.
for one doesn't work for the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Caleb just kind of needed a stern talking to. And I remember one time you told Caleb, he talked back, and you'll remember this. He talked back and you said, if you say, you've never done it. You've never washed our mouth out with soap. You never even said it. But that day you said, if you say that again, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. And this guy goes get a soap bar and you put it in your mouth and you rub the soap bar in your mouth and you went like, you taunted her,
remember that.
you were like, oh, are you? And you washed your own mouth out with soap and basically were like,
Yes,
it's
I
not
did
doing
it.
nothing, And that's been your personality's like, you're going to fall in line, but you're going to give some attitude in the process. Mine was like, I'm not even going to respond to you. I'm like, I do what I want, when I want, how I want. And so you guys had to go to more physical with me. Like you would have to grab me, throw me in the room, shut the door. Dad would spank me because that's what motivated me, which was like, you could take something away, and I have ADHD, so my thoughts are my greatest playground. So you take something away from me, I'll look at the sky and create a game, So for me, it was like, you guys had to pop me. I remember a couple times with your rings, you did pop me in the mouth, just turning around and saying like, stop. And you guys popped me. So it was very different for each of us. And it's, I think it's less about getting them to do what you want, but rather what's going to motivate them in the way that they need to be motivated to make sure we don't develop character habits.
Yeah, and I think what Pauline said earlier, set them down and you talk to them. Tell them what they did wrong, or you know, and tell them what the consequences are. You know, you
Grandma,
do it again.
Grandma,
This is what's going to happen.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
No, because I want to ask Grandma this along these lines, because
And we'll close with this.
you raised, in regards to Dad and Uncle Brian, you raised very high achieving sons, very high achieving, very disciplined. Does any of those character traits relate to your success in how you raise them disciplinary wise?
As to you're saying, are they successful because of the way we discipline them?
Yeah,
Is that what
is
you're
there
saying?
any connection with just kind of?
Well, I would just say that your grandpa's the one that did the disciplining. He used the belt.
Usually it's the men, the
He
fathers.
used the belt.
Uh-huh.
And I would really get mad at him because he'd whack your father. He'd whack him on the legs. And I'd say,
He would wet it sometimes too, right? If I remember Dad saying that one time, he wet the belt one time. Dad would know. But
well,
that'd be the Father's Day
he would whack
podcast.
him, and I didn't want to be in the
Yeah,
room. I
that'll
didn't
be
want to be
fun.
in the room because it always hurt me as a mom to see him getting whacked. But I think one time Diego, because I think our rule was 3 whacks and you're done. But I think one time he was like so mad at Diego, he might have gone about 5 times or 6 times, and Diego, and all I could hear was Diego going, ah, ah, you know, and I'm like, oh, my heart was being broken all that time. Brian got whacked too, but Brian's whackings didn't seem as hard. So I think to myself, well, because I know that Diego was more rambunctious and he was more naughtier. He was always pulling. Pushing the envelope, everything. So in that sense, yeah. But I think too, Caleb, is that at a very early age with both the boys, we had a very structured system at the home for them with respect to duties and responsibilities. Now, your father was the one, Grandpa was the one that followed through. In other words, they had to cut the lawn. Saturdays was cutting the lawn thing. He took them out there. He showed them how to do the mower, showed them how to cut. And, you know, Diego just wanting to, and Grandpa was very methodical. You know, whatever he does really well. Very methodical. You're going to cut the lawn. Okay, cut it. Now you're going to rake it. Then you're going to pick up the grass. Then after that, you're going to trim this. He was very methodical in showing them step by step by step, showing them the skill level in completing a project and doing it right. So I don't know if maybe that helped and because they had to learn those concepts. That helped them later on in life about doing, you know, being very methodical in the way because that also involved critical thinking or, you know, learning how to do things the right way. And I would just say that it's a combination because see how tender and loving and kind your mom is? So tender and loving and giving and stuff. And then I'm pretty much the same way. And yet Diego, my husband, was a little rough and stuff like that. I think it's just a combination of both. We just knew that, number one, we wanted the best for you guys. I mean, I knew I wanted the best for my boys. I'm sure she wanted the best for you kids. So we just took the godly principles that God wrote out as to how to teach and train a child. And I was because that's just me. My mother was that way with me. And I was just always aware of getting into their business. I was very aware of getting in. I was intuitive that way. They didn't look right. Something was on them. I needed to go and find out what it was. So I would go and I would find my way to get into their space. But I didn't do it, you know, abruptly or anything. I allowed them to really open up to me. But they knew I was available.
Yeah. Over the years with your kids, you're like their confidant, right? I mean, I can only go off of what I know with Dad, but like Dad, you're his confidant, you're his prayer warrior. Like, is that the same for Uncle Brian and Auntie Paulette? I mean, I know Auntie Paulette considers you her best friend, and these are all people in their 50s and 60s. You know,
that's huge.
You know what I would say that with respect to my adult children, I respect the fact that they have come to me. I just, I suppose I've lived my life in such a way where I wanted to always be available to help them when I could. But I also knew they had their own mind, their own will to do what they wanted. And usually when they came, it wasn't to ask my permission of anything. It was just to kind of get another perspective on something. And so in that sense, it was kind of like more of an advisory kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've appreciated that because then they'd walk away, okay, you know,
Yeah.
especially men, they're not going to say nothing.
Yeah,
They're just
yeah.
going to listen. But you feel like, okay, they asked my opinion, give my opinion, and then they walk away. With Paulette being a girl, a female, we are a little bit more wanting more of the detail kind of thing, the guiding of everything. And yet even with Paulette, because of what I said earlier, any one of you ladies, maybe this is your life too, and you're now going to be raising daughters. I would say that stay close to them. Don't make the mistake I made with Paulette by not being there at her early years and even teenage years and adult years, because I was so busy. I realized for my marriage, now I'm going to encompass the marriage in this. For my husband and I to succeed in what we wanted, I had to help my marriage. I had to help my husband by working. So that at those early years meant going back to school. It was still working. It was running a whole household. It was raising children and everything. Finally, when I was able to get my really good job where it helped in the income and everything, look, I think to myself now, my boys were already pretty older, and they were settled. They had the foundation. My daughter didn't. And so she's the one that suffered because of it. But it's my fault. I can't blame Paulette. I blame Pauline. So I'm just saying, even you can still do it all, but don't let your mother-in-law be the one that raises her without you being involved in that life. I let my mother-in-law just raise her without me being a part of it. I don't know if that makes sense, because grandmas are fabulous helpers.
It's great wisdom. Yeah.
But parents have to be there with them too.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that hi. How's it going? And be in tune with your ear as to what they're saying.
Yeah.
If I could add something to that, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? If I could add something to your question, obviously, you know, I have two little boys too, and their personalities of what you named are very much the same. So I would say I'm in the same boat as you. But there was something I stumbled on TikTok the other day that was convicting, and I told Sanaz, and it says your first child, you grow up together. Your second child, you raise, or you parent. And so I got emotional with that because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting older as I'm young, and I'm growing with Matthias, but we're growing him together to where I'm figuring out who I am. I'm trying to figure out who he is, but there's this different level of love and tender I'm showing Thomas, even though he is beyond crazy, that I didn't show Matthias. I'm very strict, hard, serious, get it together, yes ma'am, no ma'am, sit down, discipline. Thomas throwing things at our face, our head, and I'm like, this is funny, this is crazy. But Matthias is looking at me like, what? That's not fair. So that TikTok was so convicting because I sat there as a mother and I said, I'm not doing it right. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying I'm not hitting the mark right now. But there's things that I do have to change in my discipline to show Matthias grace, that even if he does make mistakes, because he's like Pastor Adam and Pastor D. He's a joke. Matthias is a jokester, but like I don't find it funny. Thomas is like the comedian of all comedians and can be on show, and I'm dying laughing. But Matthias is looking like this isn't. Why is this not even, Mom? And I don't ever want him to start realizing that. And so it's us reflecting and us really sitting down and asking ourselves, where can I give my child grace? Where can I actually laugh?
Yeah.
Where can he be silly? Because Adam always corrects me in that. He's like, let them be boys. Unless they're actually hurting somebody, unless they're actually putting harm to themselves, you can't control everything.
Well, we try to establish a rule in our house, which is we discipline on character issues.
Yes.
not
Yes.
on accidents or on mishaps. So if Matthias is thinking he's being funny and he breaks my sound system, well, I'm not going to discipline. It was an accident. We're going to, but if there's a character, if I see him do something that I go, oh, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't talk to people like that. You just walked in a room and the way you shaded those people when they, get your butt. Oh, that's a character issue. But if he just accidentally pulls his iPad from someone and then Thomas falls and then he looks and he's like, and he thinks I'm going to beat the heck out of him before, it's like, I have to make a quick decision. Did what he just do be a character issue, or was this an accident? Accidents we need to talk about. Let's sit down. Let's be a little more sensitive with your brother next time. But if all of a sudden you can't, and I see him whack Thomas in the head with the iPad, well, now we got a character problem, and that's just something me and Ashlee are always openly talking about. Do you think what Matthias did is a character habit, or do you think that he made a mishap in judgment as a 5-year-old may do, right? And we're going to consistently keep that over the years as, they get older and older.
I also read somewhere too, long time ago, that your first child is influenced by adults because it's only adults in the home, but your second child is influenced by a toddler. So their behavior kind of mirrors more of a toddler than of adults. Because I'm 1 year ahead of you in life. I have an 8-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy. So I'm right where you are. So how do I parent the second? I don't know. Because every day is a new challenge for the young one. With the older one is yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But a lot of it, I had to think, like, am I parenting this child differently? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, no, just like every child has a different personality, no two children, even in the same home, have the same experience because the birth order is different. Yeah. And so the second child comes and lives in a completely different home that is a little bit more rowdy and a little bit more, you kind of have to make your way. My 8-year-old asks me to make him breakfast every morning, but my 5-year-old, I come downstairs and breakfast is made for him because he's got to survive. And that's just the life that he lives. So we have to be easy on ourselves in the same way that Ashlee had said. We have to sort of we have to evaluate where it's okay to have grace and where it's okay, or where we have to sort of, step in a little bit more. But I think we're all doing the best that we can, and that is good enough.
Yes, that's right.
All right, we'll close with this. I meant to do this at the beginning, so I'm sorry. I was just so excited. We had so many people in the room. But I got back from London yesterday. I was in London and for a Christian Leaders Conference. Cool. And King Charles is being coronated this Saturday. Oh. So everything was like in his honor, the monarch,
Wow.
We're Americans, so we don't believe, in all that monarchy stuff, but nice to see that everybody's getting a king in England, So La Durée, the macaroon, your favorite, Grandma, which is French macaroons. They're doing just for this week a King Charles coronation edition of macaroons and box. So these are
do you want to eat them or save them?
These are my Mother's Day gifts to you both, which is King Charles coronation French macaroons for you both. So happy Mother's Day to my mom and my grandma.
What are they nice.
Can I open yours real quick, Grandma? I can give people an idea who may not. You've taken me to Paris when I was 22.
Went to Paris, yeah.
And La Durée was
one of our places
favorite.
to go, yes.
So what they did, so these are what, I don't know, do I got a camera? Here's what macaroons look like. And then here is King Charles's official seal for his coronation that they
got in the freezer.
So
souvenir.
Yeah, one of them you want to. So happy Mother's Day to my grandma and my mom.
Thank you.
Yes.
My wife will get something, but as I tell her, Mother's Day is for my mother and my grandmother, and Matthias and Thomas are in charge of honoring Ashlee on that
broke,
Sunday.
So yeah.
So they will make sure to give her kisses and
That's funny because Dad jokes about that because I say, "Where's my Mother's Day present?" And he'll tell me, well, "You're not my mother.
Yeah.
Your children need to."
Yeah.
Yeah. But our boys are young, so we do
Yeah.
still instill to
But,
them
but,
to honor
but,
mom and
but
stuff like that.
Mama
course.
Cindy always brings us Mother's Day gifts too. She takes care of us. so
yeah.
even though
Mom's
our
great in that way.
husbands don't, our lovely mother-in-law always makes sure that we are
Yes.
showered on Mother's Day.
Yeah,
Nice.
mom's great with that. Okay, everybody. Well, that was a great long
fantastic.
episode.
Thank you.
You guys did great.
Thank you so.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
The rest of these questions were so good. I'm gonna save the ones we didn't do, and maybe one day we could do a part 2 or something like that.
Yeah,
because
that'd be
I
good.
mean, the
Yeah.
wisdom was great, and there was still, a dozen other questions to hit. So thank you for our audience being here. Thank you for those that were listening to this as well. And
you.
so I got more from it than I thought I was
Oh,
going
this was
to.
amazing.
I thought I
Yeah.
was going to get a
Good.
lot, but I didn't. It was very riveting, but it was rich. It was full of wisdom. So thank you, Mom and Grandma, for being open.
You're welcome for
Thank you
inviting
for
we gotta
inviting us.
we gotta have you guys on more as just regular contributors. I think.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
that would be a lot of fun.
No, you did great.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
God bless everybody. Thank you for being
All
here.
right.